Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove, and for those Leicester fans watching over on Leicestershire Live, I work up in Newcastle covering Newcastle United. I'm joined by Jordan Blackwell, who you should know as your Leicester City reporter. And of course, it is Leicester City versus Newcastle on Friday. So we're going to preview the game. Jordan's just been in Brendan Rodgers' press conference. We'll start there, Jordan. What did Brendan Rodgers have to say regarding injury news and the task of facing Newcastle United?
Well, injury news, there was a couple of scares, I think, for Leicester. There's nothing serious. So Johnny Evans, who people may have seen hobbling around after the game against Southampton last Friday, he's had a scan on his foot, and it's come back all fine. There's no tear in his ligament, so he's fine to carry on. But he has been sort of playing through the pain for the past couple of months. Jamie Vardy took a knock as well and had a bit of a swollen ankle, but that's sort of calmed down a little bit, so he'll be fine as well. So no real fresh injuries. Obviously, still Harvey Barnes and James Justin, the two long-term injuries, they're still both out, but nobody new on the sidelines. And as for the game, Rodgers kind of rejected the idea that Newcastle, because of their situation, because of their kind of clear of relegation, because they're coming into that end of the season where we kind of start to hear the cliches about people, teams maybe being on the beach and players in their flip-flops and that kind of thing. He kind of rejected that and said, really, because he thinks that the Newcastle fan base sort of demands a level of performance that he doesn't think Newcastle's performances will drop off in any way now that they're coming into the end of the season. So he's still expecting a tough game.
His comments on Newcastle United and Steve Bruce have definitely created a bit of a stir amongst the Newcastle United fan base. I've just got them up here. He talks about Newcastle being a different type of game. He says they're good on the counter-attack. They have some dangerous players and they don't just sit back. Players with great speed. He says it'll be a tough game. Hopefully it'll be a tough game for Newcastle as well, he says. And then on Steve Bruce, let me just find the comments because I know these ones have definitely created a bit of a stir over on Twitter. So asked about Steve Bruce, he said, I think Steve has done an outstanding job. He's limited in terms of the budget he has to spend on players, but he's had to go in and organise. Newcastle is an incredible club. The fan base, the expectation there. He's organised them very well. You can see the football idea. I think he's done an outstanding job and he's shown he's an excellent manager. Now, Newcastle United fans would say 17th in the league, a run of only 4 wins in the last 24, 25 Premier League games is far from outstanding.
Yeah, I think it's probably a case of he's a nice bloke.
Yes,
Brendan Rodgers is. I think he's not going to badmouth any managers, particularly ones that he comes up against fairly regularly. I'm sure he knows Steve Bruce fairly well from games against each other and just being in the game. So I would say he's probably over-egging it a bit in terms of being an excellent manager. Certainly from my experience watching Newcastle over the past couple of years, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I certainly wouldn't rank Bruce as among the top managers in the division. But so I think he was just. I think he's also guarding against complacency as well. I don't think he wants to say anything about the fact that it could be an easier game for Leicester because it is really one that they need to win, given the fixtures they've got and the fact that the top 4 is on the line.
How much of an impact do you think that 1-1 draw with Southampton will have on this game? Because when you face a team that goes down to 10 men so early on, a team like Southampton who have fallen like a rock really in recent months, Leicester City were favourites going into that game even before the cards were dealt in their favour with that red card. Do you think the fact that Leicester only managed a point will maybe encourage Leicester, encourage Brendan Rodgers even more to make sure that they don't throw away an opportunity against Newcastle on Friday, a game which they are seen as overwhelming favourites?
I think it will. I think they probably will have analysed it in a sense that it could end up being a little bit of a similar game because of how Southampton had to set up. I think we've seen from Southampton this season that they're quite energetic. They're sort of in your face, but I think because of they had the red card, so then they ended up sort of sitting a little bit deeper and sort of making the box as compact as possible. And you'll be able to tell me better, Andrew, but I would say that might be Newcastle's idea coming into the game to sit a little bit deeper and then try to use the talents that they do have with the likes of Saint-Maximin on the front foot, on the counter attack to try and get the ball forward quickly. So I think it will be a decent, almost rehearsal for Leicester for potentially this game on Friday. But I think the real problem was that they just lacked a bit of energy. They had I think it was their fourth game in 13 days. They played the last game of the previous round of fixtures by playing on the Monday night, and then they were playing the first game of that weekend of fixtures by playing on the Friday night. So I think they were just lacking a little bit of energy in there, and I think you need that speed, you need that intensity in your game in those forward areas when you are playing a team that defends deep, and I think they lacked that. But after a week off, or certainly a week to prepare, I think they should be able to move it a little bit more quickly and hopefully break Newcastle down.
You say that Newcastle had quite a few days off before this Arsenal game, and looked like they'd been the ones travelling all over the place for the Europa League. They were lackluster. They were very poor, and they tried to sit back and invite the pressure on, but inevitably, Arsenal got the better of them. And I think many Newcastle United fans will be hoping Newcastle don't approach the game in the same manner. We saw against Liverpool how they didn't approach the game with fear, but against Arsenal, they seemed to have a bit too much respect for Arsenal, like it was the Arsenal of old in many ways. And you just hope that Steve Bruce and his coaching staff don't look at this Leicester side and see them battling for Champions League, see the great players they've got, because Brendan Rodgers has got some talent to work from, but you just hope Steve Bruce doesn't look at that and in a way fear that, and he just tries to play to Newcastle's own strengths. But certainly was disappointing the way Newcastle played against Arsenal, and they do need a response, I think, on Friday. But how important is this for Leicester in terms of that Champions League qualification, given the result, the fixtures coming up towards the end of the season?
Yeah, I think it's important because they don't want to get into a place where the pressure's on, and I think that's when they might, they don't want to crumble again. I think after the experience of last season and kind of being in the top four all year and then sort of stumbling at the end and then eventually dropping out in the last couple of weeks, that will probably be playing on their minds a little bit. I think they've responded much better to setbacks this season, and there's certainly been no dip in form like there was last season. I think last year it was a sustained run of kind of mid-table form, whereas this year, yes, they've dropped points here and there, but they've always responded pretty well. So yes, I think it will be an important game, because if they then don't win again, that's 2 games back to back not winning. Teams behind them might make up a little bit of ground, and then they might start to get a little bit worried. And then the fixtures they've got to respond are against Manchester United, Chelsea, and Tottenham in the final 3. So I don't think there's a fear of those games, because in the sort of the first round of fixtures, if you like, they took 7 points off those 3 teams. So 2 wins and 1 draw. So I don't think they're fearing or dreading those games. They're thinking that they're not going to get any points, so they've got to beat Newcastle. But I would say that to not beat Newcastle, given the difference in given where the 2 teams are in the league, I think that would be considered a real missed opportunity.
I mean, from a Newcastle point of view, we've got Gaz there who is asking, can Newcastle secure Premier League football this weekend, or do I see going to the penultimate game? I think, I do think Newcastle will get beat off Leicester City, and then I do think they'll struggle against Manchester City. So we'll probably go down to the games against Sheffield United. Hopefully by the time Fulham come around on the last day of the season, Newcastle will be safe. But I can't see them getting the better of Leicester City this weekend. I mean, Jordan, if they were to do so, if you had the chance to ring Steve Bruce up and say this is the way you get the better of Leicester City, what would you be telling them?
I would say to play on the counter. I would say that's where Leicester have been at their weakest this season, although they've done much better against the top clubs this year. They've lost at home to West Ham, to Fulham, to Villa, to Everton. In all of those games, particularly the West Ham and the Fulham games, they sat back and just played on the counter and scored the first goal. Once they were able to get the first goal, they were able to sit back even more. Leicester were pulled out even more, and that created more spaces. I think Leicester's defence, since they had all three of their main centre-backs fit, which has not been a regular feature this season, but they've been very good in defence with a back three of Fofana, Evans and Soyuncu. But I think there's occasionally a little bit of space behind the wing-backs. I think to get the better of Leicester's defence, you do want to probably drag Fofana out to the right or Soyuncu out to the left to create a little bit more space in the middle of the pitch. So I would say that's probably the weak area. In terms of defending against Leicester's players, I think some of Newcastle's defenders will have to be wary of Vardy drifting left. Since Leicester have been playing with this two up front with Vardy and Iheanacho, I think teams have probably made the mistake still of putting more than one man on Vardy and maybe applying too much focus to him. It's kind of understandable because of his astonishingly good record over the past 5 years. But that's allowed more space for Iheanacho, and Iheanacho's the one staying in the box, whereas Vardy's kind of drifting to the left and getting in there. So I think he's kind of going back to how he played when he first joined Leicester in the Championship. So this is like 7-8 years ago, where he's sort of stretching defences by pulling wide. So it's a bit of a different role for him, but he's doing it very, very well. And Iheanacho's the one benefiting at the minute because he's the one that's in the box and getting the chances. So I don't think it's, I think, as you say, Leicester probably are overwhelming favourites, but I don't think it can be discounted as a straightforward defeat for Newcastle. I think certainly there are examples earlier in the season of teams coming to Leicester and doing very well.
How are they handling the pressure? Because obviously last year, you've already mentioned that kind of run of form they had. Then they missed out on the Champions League. This time around, they've got a decent cushion, but they have got tough fixtures coming up after the Newcastle game. So how are they dealing with that pressure? Is there an expectation that this year they have to qualify for the Champions League, and does that play into things?
I don't know if there's a feeling that they have to qualify for the Champions League. I just think they will be disappointed if they don't, because Rodgers has kind of changed the way he speaks about it, in that he always says, even though Leicester are third and they've literally been in the top four for every single week of the season, he's saying, "Oh, we've not got a top four place until it's secure." So I think he's trying to make it seem as if Leicester don't have anything to defend, whereas I think by the majority of fans, it's seen as Leicester are the ones that have got something to lose, if you like. In terms of the pressure, I think they'll be better. The players will be better off for the experiences of last season. I think Rodgers has maybe hinted at before. Maybe there was a little bit of excitement because, I mean, at Christmas in January they were 14 points clear of fifth. So I think there was maybe an expectation that they could kind of not coast through the second half of the season, but certainly didn't need to be at that level, at the top level, to finish in the top four. And obviously, Manchester United, after they brought Bruno Fernandes in, kind of produced title-winning form for the rest of the season. That was eventually Leicester's downfall. This season, it's not been that case because although they've been in the top four for the whole season, they've never had a real substantial gap. I think it's only ever got as high as 8 points, something like that. Obviously, it's down to 5 at the minute. So there's a little bit of wariness there. As I said before, they've any setbacks they've had, they've responded really well to. The injuries affected them massively last season, but this year they've kind of the squad's a little bit deeper and they've managed to negotiate those better. The recent change in formation, I think, is the best example of that. That Leicester basically completely altered their usual setup and they've still managed to pick up results. With Iheanacho scoring a ridiculous amount of goals. I think it's 12 goals in 10 games. So I think it's I don't think the pressure's getting to them as much because there's not really any evidence this season of them kind of stumbling. They've always managed to keep the form pretty much. They've always had kind of top 6 form throughout the season.
And looking at Newcastle, is there a player that you're looking forward to seeing on Friday?
Saint-Maximin. I've been watching Newcastle a little bit. I think I watched the West Ham game a couple of weeks ago. Of course, being in the stadiums and sort of following Leicester, I am a Leicester fan, so I don't get to celebrate the goals. So the only goals I get to celebrate are the ones that are scored against Leicester's rivals. So I did. I think that Willock goal at the end was probably the most I've celebrated a goal this season. But certainly from what I've seen of Saint-Maximin, he is one of the best dribblers in the league in terms of how close the level of his close control, that he's able to move at speed and still keep the ball, right next to him. And the bits I saw of the Liverpool game recently as well, he kind of tormented a lot of very good players. So I think he's the one. I think probably previously I've kind of wondered if he quite had the end product in terms of, yes, he's very, very good at dribbling forward and getting it to the box. But then is he a bit too showbiz and a bit throwing in too many step overs rather than
actually certainly added that to his game, I think.
Yes.
Since he's come back from the long layoff from COVID and the injuries, there's certainly been a bit of a change, and you can see he's making the right decisions now. When Jacob Murphy scored a few weeks back, that was Alan St-Max. I think it was against Burnley. Alan St-Maximin, pulled the ball back from the byline where usually you would see him maybe going and taking on the same defender again or trying to get the ball in from a tight angle. But he made the right decision, pulled it back, and Murphy scored. And that turned out to be an absolutely crucial goal. And then he went and scored the winner. So, yeah, you definitely can see that coming into his game more. And he loves the challenge. And I'm no doubt that Brendan Rodgers will maybe set his team out to maybe try and rattle Saint-Maximin, maybe focus on him a bit. But that's the kind of challenge he loves. He's really in his element. The downside of that is if he doesn't have a good game or he doesn't really turn up like he didn't against Arsenal, then Newcastle really do not have a threat. And that is a real worry, not just for against Leicester, but looking ahead to next season as well.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you from what you said. I do think recently he looks to have provided a lot more from an end product point of view. But yeah, I think you're right in terms of obviously Newcastle have got. I don't know. I think that this is probably an opinion shared by most Newcastle fans that Callum Wilson is probably the best striker the club have had in a few years. But like all good strikers, they still require a little bit of service, and they need. I think when I've seen Newcastle previously, sometimes it feels like there's such a huge gap between where the defenders are and where Wilson is, and you need players in the middle there to actually get the ball to him and to get him chances. I think he's done very well off maybe not quite as probably off a limited supply in terms of what maybe other Premier League strikers get. So yes, I think players like Saint-Maximin are important. I think Harvey Barnes is probably the closest example Leicester have. Obviously, they've kind of missed him these past couple of months, but he's certainly a player that the focus with him was always, I think, where he perhaps differed from other wingers is that he wasn't about the tricks and flicks or anything like that. Is literally the first thought is how can I get the ball forward as quickly as possible? How can I get an assist? How can I get a goal? So it's all very efficient. He's not flashy in any way. And I do think that even though Barnes is only 23, I think he's probably someone that a lot of other wingers could perhaps learn from because he is so efficient with it. So yes, I think it's when you've not got maybe the ball players. I think Leicester now get it kind of from defence to attack because they've got ball players like Tielemans and Maddison, particularly Tielemans. So they don't necessarily need a dribbler like Barnes to get the ball forward because they can pass it through the lines. Looking at Newcastle, I wouldn't necessarily say that they don't have any players to the level of quality Tielemans is. So you need players like Saint-Maximin just to get the ball forward. So yeah, you're right. It becomes a crucial role to actually get Newcastle on the attack. Never mind to actually do the bits at the business end in terms of providing goals and assists as well.
I have to think if you're the opposition manager, Newcastle's game plan is sometimes the easiest because essentially it does look to be give Alan Saint-Maximin the ball and hope he can do something magical, which he often does. But you do need a plan B, C, D for when that doesn't work. How do you see Friday going then? Will Leicester get the win and get those valuable points for Champions League qualification?
I think they will. I think they do have too much quality. They are playing pretty well. As I said, the Southampton game was maybe a little bit of an anomaly in terms of there was a little bit of tiredness in the team, but certainly the current setup is working very well. The combination between Vardy and Iheanacho has been superb. The defence is extremely strong with the three in there at the minute. I think there's been a little bit of debate among Leicester fans about whether Maddison should keep his place or whether Perez should come back in. So that adds another storyline in terms of playing against Newcastle. I think Maddison's come off a pretty 2.5-month injury, and I think there's a feeling that because he's not quite fit, he's not quite at the level that he can be. I think if both players are fully fit, Maddison is the better player, but Perez's performances in the kind of the number 10 position behind Vardy and Iheanacho just before the last international break, and particularly in the cup quarter-final against United, were two of his best performances for the club, and Maddison hasn't reached that level. So I think there's been a bit of debate as to who will play. So it'd be interesting. I think that may be something Rodgers considers, bringing Perez back in. But we'll have to wait and see on that front. But yes, I think I would say Leicester have too much quality, and I think that the Southampton game was an outlier. I don't think it's any sign of the pressure getting to them or the form dipping. I think they are still playing very well, and I think they'll win. Well, I'll say both teams will score. I'll say 2-1.
2-1. I mean, Leicester does seem to be a bit of a bogey side for Newcastle. I don't know. I do think Leicester will win. I just hope it's not a familiar scoreline. We've seen some thumpings from Leicester in recent years, and that's always the fear. And Newcastle, of course, still not yet safe from relegation. So the sooner they pick up the points, the better. But I do think they'll have to wait another weekend to secure safety, and I do see Leicester winning here. I'm going to say 3-0. Hopefully, I'm wrong with that scoreline. Hopefully, I'm wrong with that result. But yeah, Leicester just have got too much quality, as you say. Fingers crossed. Anyway, from a Newcastle point of view, our score predictions are wrong. But Jordan, thank you for joining us. To you guys watching on Leicestershire Live, head over to Leicestershire Live to see what Brendon Rodgers had to say. Over on Chronicle Live, we've got all the build-up as well from the Newcastle point of view. Enjoy the rest of your week.